going on, everyone? Welcome back to another Panel B podcast. And for the first time in, a month?
Just
all three of us
at least
are
a few
here.
weeks.
Yep. We've made it through. We got
full
through the
Panel B.
Yep, got through everybody's little personal vacations there, and we're back for now, at least for good. Julian Edlow, Steve Buchanan. I'm Alex Jankowski, and, a couple different thoughts on how we're going to start this podcast. Should we brag about our own particular athletic exploits? Found out there wasn't much to brag about.
No.
Or should we brag about the first half of our best ball lineups? But we'll leave that for Twitter. So we're actually going to talk a lot about baseball. There's a lot going on with the All-Star break heading into the second season. We'll touch a little bit on how odds have changed, lines have changed from opening day to now. Any reaction on the All-Star game? Kind of a disappointment when you see one player hit 91 home runs in the home run derby and then 7 runs are scored in the All-Star game.
Overall, the whole event gets a C+.
Okay.
The home run derby started off great.
Yes.
I was like, okay, I'm kind of feeling this. I'm liking this a lot. Then the All-Star game came around, and this is why I don't watch this to begin with.
It was something like 85% of the people had bet the over, which I think it was at 8.5, and then
which is
7
terrible.
runs.
I think the biggest misconception was that last year was like a total slugfest. Like last year just like went off the rails. It was like 19 lead changes.
Generally, the under works out in the All-Star game, and people jumped on the, whatever it was, 20 runs we saw last year.
Yep, thanks. That's where I was
Conspiracy
going.
theory time. Did they go back to the original baseballs?
I know, that's where you were going.
No, that's not where I was going. Where I was going is I was actually going to back it up with historical data. Besides last year, the past 5 years, they've averaged like 5.8 runs per game. The All-Star game is not like an offensive contest. It's all good pitchers. Are you going to look at me when I'm talking here, or are you just not going to pay attention?
That's a good point, Bucks.
Thank you. But what I was saying was...
The band's back together.
So what I was going to say was, I thought Justin Verlander was talking about the juice balls because he's just trying to cover his own ass because he's given up so many home runs
26.
this season. Right. So he was just basically making a premeditated excuse. He'd be like, look, the balls are juice. So when I give up 3 home runs in the first inning, that's my excuse. But then he went out and pitched well.
Yeah, that was the one bet I liked, was the over in the first inning.
Me too.
Because I did think he was going to give up a home
me
run.
too.
I just thought there was too much
Played
there.
the under in the first inning.
Yeah.
But
very good.
That's why I'm sharp and you guys aren't.
But no, I think so many people were looking at what happened last year and just kind of made this misconception that the All-Star game is full of offense. And historically, it's not. Like, you go back and look at, like, even, like, the past 10 years, it's a lot of, 3-1, 5-3. Like, they're low-scoring games overall because really, when you think about it, it's the best of the best pitchers that are going in there. So, like, last night we had Ryu start, and then it was, like, DeGrom. Like, that's, it's just one after another here. So I wasn't surprised at the under hit, even though it did kind of sweat it out near the end there.
I feel like the pitching always has the advantage because these guys know that they're going one inning.
Right.
So, like, when a guy like Verlander takes the mound, I'm sure his goal is to throw 9 shutout innings. If he makes it 7, 8, that's a great day. But, the goal is to stretch yourself out for 7, 8, 9 innings. When you can go in there and throw 1 inning of 99 or whatever whatever the hardest you can throw is, it generally worked out because it looked like a lot of guys were swinging really hard behind some pretty fast fastballs very early in that game, and it just kind of, that trend continues because then another starter comes in and just keeps it going. So for me, I thought that it was a pretty good baseball game. It was a 4-3 game that took a little over 2.5 hours. Like, that's kind of what we want baseball to be, and it still wasn't that good because it's just there's not that much there. Shane Bieber's your MVP for striking 3 out in the 5th inning.
Stupid.
Is the 5th inning the most?
Obviously, they went with the hometown narrative because Chapman did the same exact thing in the 9th inning to get the save. So if you're going to go with a pitcher that gets 3 strikeouts and has a clean inning, then you go with Chapman. But there was just nothing in that. Unless you hit a walk-off to get that kind of excitement to get somebody to earn the MVP, it was just kind of your regular old solid baseball game.
Well, how do you not give it to Gallo? Because his home run ended up being the difference maker because Alonso hit that bases-loaded single, scored 2 runs. So if it wasn't for Gallo hitting that home run, we would have had a tie game and, Jesus Christ, if we go into extra innings, we don't want that. But Gallo ended up being the difference maker. So, to give it to the hometown Bieber, like, oh, wow, because he struck out the side, Big deal. Well, what did that end up doing to end up being? Well, how is that the most important part of the game?
With the passion that you're talking about it makes me think it should, decide home field advantage for this World Series or something like that.
Like when they gave it to Mariano Rivera a few years ago, when it was like his last hurrah,
right.
Like it was just like, okay, why?
At least Cal Ripken homered in his.
Right, like
True.
At least like do something that it was meaningful. Like I get it, like Bieber had a great inning, like there's no denying that. But like at the end of the day, like. Big deal. He struck out the side.
It can be hard to pick an MVP of a baseball game when everybody plays so little. Like, somebody has to make an impactful play. I guess Gallo had what turned into the winning home run. So I think there's some weight there. I'm just saying that it's not obvious. There is no real MVP of a baseball game that's 4-3 where everybody pitches one inning, everybody plays, gets an at-bat or two. Like, it's just not something that's going to happen that's going to stand out in most baseball games.
Okay, so who would you have picked?
I don't really care. Like, there
Good
is
content.
no pick.
Julian would have picked the viewer because, like you said, it was a sound, well-played baseball game.
I'll take Chapman, I guess, because he did the same thing that Bieber did just in the ninth inning to get the save.
You did, though, Julian. You mentioned what baseball should be or what we're hoping to be, and that's a good transition, albeit it was 5 minutes ago, but good transition because I want to touch on this story in the Washington Post about another All-Star game happening tonight in the Atlantic League. We will not be talking about betting angles or DFS plays in the Atlantic League, but they will be using quote-unquote robot umps for their All-Star game tonight. It's not an actual robot standing behind there. We're not, Skynet is not yet live. It will be soon, though, I'm sure. But it's one of many changes that the Atlantic League will be implementing over the next 3 years. And I want to run through them real quick and just get your thoughts because some of them are pretty radical and kind of cool. So there's obviously the robot ump, which the real umpire has the ability to overrule if he chooses. So MLB umpires, I think, are probably going to take that to heart. No mound visits.
Nice.
No defensive shifts at all.
Nice.
3 batter minimum for new pitchers entering a game. Larger bases, 18 by 18 instead of 15 by 15. And then starting the second half of this season, the league will allow, I'm reading from the Washington Post, the league will allow batters to steal first base on any pitch. Like it's a drop third. Basically, like what happens in a drop third strike, at any point in the count, if the catcher drops the ball, you can try and run to first base. I don't know how they'd score that. I guess you would maybe get 2 DK points, or you'd be reaching on an error. Honestly, I don't know. But
That's
it's crazy.
A steal. It's 5 points.
Yeah, I would
right?
think it's a steal.
No.
Sure. Hey, well then I'm all for it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's so, like, we've heard so many different things, like, oh, we'll try to do this, we'll try to do this. I've never heard the stealing first base. And when I heard about it, I was like, that's absolutely wild, and I love it. Like,
Well, it's crazy.
I love it.
It's kind of like when they move the point after back in the NFL, right? And it's like, well, it's to entice people to try and go for 2 more. Mm-hmm. And here it's like the count's what? I mean, maybe if it's depending on what the count is, if it's not 2 strikes, like you're ahead in the count. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting, like how that'll work out, where it's like, all right, let's risk an out. Billy Hamilton maybe could have resurrect his career, but.
I just think it's like it just brings another dynamic to the game. You know what I mean? And that's what really baseball lacks is that, we have suicide squeezes, but you never really see that. It's just another aspect of the game that just makes it a little bit more interesting because that's really what they need. They need to draw interest back into the game. So is this going to be like the one-all end-all? Well, I mean, absolutely not. But it's just another like layer, I guess you could say, to the game that just makes it a little more interesting. Like I think the shift kind of kills a lot of the interest because 9 times out of the 10, said player is going to hit into the shift.
See, I don't like that though. I don't like that they're banning the shift because. Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, I mean, you're still fielding the same amount of players. You should be allowed to place them wherever you want. To me, I don't like that one.
That was the only one that stood out to me because I feel like that's defensive strategy. Like, you can put your guys wherever you want on the field, right or wrong.
That's like saying, like, if Julio Jones is going off, you're not allowed to double cover him.
Right. So I feel the same way about that. And that if that leaves another receiver open for 10 for 100 and a touchdown, then it leaves another receiver open for 10 for 100 and a touchdown. So that I feel like is strategy related. You can put your guys where you want to put them. Everything else I love. Every other rule, because baseball, does it need to speed up a little bit? Yes. But the main thing that it needs in whatever the game length is, 2.5 hours, whatever, is excitement. And all of these rules, for the most part, bring more excitement. If anything, aside from the shift, which I agree with you on, Janko, the ump being able to overturn something, I don't like, unless it's egregious and
like
the
a glitch
robot
in the
makes
system.
it, like, I don't know, maybe a ball bounces in the dirt and bounces into the strike zone, and the robot doesn't know how to get that right, so you overturn that. But, like, I don't want any judgment calls like, ooh, that was close, I'm going to call it a strike 3. Nope. The robot said it's a ball. It's a ball. The rest of the rules make the game more fun during however long the 2.5, 3 hour game, and I'm all for that. For me, I agree with you. The defensive strategy, do that on your own. Everything else, any rule change you can make to make the game more exciting, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and just going back to the automated umpiring, so basically the ump will be wearing an AirPod. Right. There's a lot of Apple promotion in this Washington Post article.
Very nice.
Basically, and it'll feed up to the computer, which is behind home plate, but then is up in the press box as well. The umpire will hear either ball, strike, or did not track in his earpiece. He's wearing a single one, so you know it's falling out at least 5 times during the game. And will they? What I'm most curious about is, will they make public the amount of times that the umpire just doesn't listen to it? Because certainly with some of the reputations in the MLB with these umpire crews,
sure.
If you try to implement this, they're just not listening.
I mean, you would hope that, just kind of like how they have the strike zone stuff on TV, you would hope that they have something up where we just kind of know what the robot is calling. Mm-hmm. So if it's different, whatever the ump calls is different, we would know.
Whatever makes
not that I know anything about this, but
whatever makes Angel Hernandez not employed anymore, I'm all for it. That's kind of where I'm at on this subject.
Also, I mean, and also in the news now too, the NBA, right? Coaches' challenges are coming to the NBA.
I saw that last night.
They said it's going to be a gesture and not a flag. Probably safer.
It is.
Although whatever the gesture is it's got to be hilarious. I don't care what it's going to be. It's just got to be hilarious.
It'll definitely be funny to watch.
The flag, I like the visual though, because like I love especially when Bill Belichick did it and he throws it like 30 yards down the field.
What I love is that the flag was never supposed to be it. It was supposed to be like a buzzer that they had on their microphone. That buzzed the umpire.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The flag was the backup in case but the buzzer never worked. Or like there was a lot of discrepancy over whether or not it was annoyed. Or I think coaches wanted to, show off their athleticism and say that they can throw a flag, 10 yards. It's pretty excellent. And, I just don't want to slow down the game either, right? I mean, we see that with reviews in all sports slowing down the game. If an umpire is trying to listen, wait, repeat that, what did you say? Is that a ball?
For sports like basketball and football, that's not a problem. You know what I mean? Like, I don't worry about timing on sports like that.
I mean, the last 2-minute review stuff has gotten a little bit sloppy in basketball. Like, I don't have an NBA example off the top of my head, but the national championship game in college, Texas Tech versus Virginia, there were a lot of reviews down the stretch of that game that really slowed it down. And it was a really good game.
There's so many judgment calls that, like, you have to just accept that you can't get it perfect no matter how many times you slow it down. And, in basketball especially, you always have a guy who's trying to catch the ball and then someone pushing it. So then it's going that way, but he was the last one to touch it.
So that's the new, that was a really
right?
big one in the national championship game where a guy deflects the ball out of bounds, but it like rolled off of his thumb, so it was actually a turnover. That's like the new, when you're sliding into second and your foot pops off for a second and you hold the glove on the whole time and you're out. It's
maybe these
putting everything so under a microscope, like... It's just a little too much. We'll see how this works. I don't know if this is going to be great for the NBA. You can challenge like a foul in the last 30 seconds of the game. That's going to be intense because you're re-examining a judgment call.
Right.
Like it could be egregious, but it's still a judgment call. So.
And it gets down to what depending on the circumstance, like what the actual nature of the rule is. So this topic gets brought up a lot in hockey right now because you can challenge offsides. And you're talking about whether or not a skate blade might be a centimeter above the ice or not. Like, that's not why the offsides exist. Like, it exists to stop cherry picking. And clearly, like, a zone rush that could have been 30 seconds before the goal was scored in no way impacted whether or not the goal was going to be scored. And those are the types of things that then you're spending 4 minutes trying to figure out. And it's not what you want.
But like I said, I don't think it will take away from the experience of watching the sports. Like baseball, anything that makes the game longer, people are, with the pitchforks and everything, games like hockey, basketball, football, I don't think it's going to take much away. Like we'll hear some chatter because everybody chatters about everything, but I think for those sports, it's not that big of a deal.
Well, and I just think too the way that with sports betting and fantasy now, where everything is under such a microscope.
Yep.
When you're talking about buzzer beating threes that aren't beating anyone in terms of a game, but it's changing what a spread might be, or it's giving someone an extra 3 DK points.
Yep.
Those types of things. Everything's just put under a microscope now, and I think you just have to realize that that's the actual live event might suffer if you're dedicated to getting it right like that. Let's shift a little bit though. As much as I love umpire and review talk, looking ahead to the second half of the MLB season. DK Sportsbook talking a lot about opening day lines and current lines and how much those might have shifted. There are a lot when you talk about a team like the Rays who went from plus 6,600 to win the World Series plus 2,200 now. Kind of the exact opposite for the Red Sox, who went from plus 650 to plus 2,500. There's a ton of these that came out from MVP in both leagues, Cy Youngs in both leagues, divisions, World Series. Just focusing on those who either rose the most or fell the most. Edlow, shameless plug time because you'll be writing about this on the DK Playbook.
Let's do it.
Give us a little preview there. What stood out to you the most?
Yeah, so from a World Series standpoint, obviously the Dodgers, Yankees, and Astros are the 3 favorites, but they were right around the 3 favorites to start the season with the Red Sox in the mix, who have now fallen back a little bit. So their rises are, the Dodgers going from plus 800 to plus 300 are the most notable, and I think those odds reflect the most because they're so far and ahead in the NL and there's no other team there, whereas the Yankees and Astros are kind of, we would think, on pace to battle in a AL championship series, and the winner would get there. I think the Yankees odds do stand out to me though, even at plus 350, just because when they have it all together, they have so much more than anybody else. And I know the Dodgers are pitching really well, but I thought the Yankees stood out the most as a riser that still has value. And then just in terms of the long shot ones, the Braves opened at plus 2,000. They're at plus 900. The Twins opened at plus 4,000. They're at plus 900. Those aren't necessarily teams that I like to win the World Series. I wouldn't feel comfortable betting on them. But for where they are from a standings perspective, I guess there's a little bit of value on them. But those opening day numbers kind of tell us what kind of teams they are, and they could easily revert back to what they were expected to be in the second half of the season, and then you're just getting bad value on them at plus 900. So it really depends how you view these teams in their divisions. Was their first half for real or not?
Yeah, and I think, when you're searching for value and, they'll be considered like a faller right now, but teams like the Phillies or the Cubs who went, Cubs went plus 1,400 to plus 20 to 1, whereas the Phillies went 10 to 1 to 2,200. It obviously sounds like, they may not be living up to expectation, but you're still talking about teams in the hunt and still very talented teams. Is that now where you start to look if you are trying to call value?
The Red Sox are just ridiculous value right now, especially with the chatter that they're in the market for a starter. Nathan Eovaldi is supposedly going to be the closer moving forward, which is, mind-boggling, but whatever. But, a guy like Zach Wheeler has been someone who's been talked up about potentially going to the Red Sox or the Yankees. The Red Sox, when they went to the break, they're scoring a ton of runs right now. If they can get that closer, that end of the game guy, they can get another starter, and that offense continues to go plus 2,500 for the World Series odds. Those are really, really good odds, especially seeing that they were plus 650 to start the year. So I feel like that's one right there too. The other one I just want to point out too, which I never understood when the season began, is that the Braves are plus 300 to win the NL East. I never understood why they were so low with the Phillies and Nationals.
It was all the Phillies. It was. You think about the timing of the moves that the Phillies made, and
right.
Not only obviously Harper, but then Real Muto and McCutcheon too. So.
And I get it, but the Braves are one of those teams that is just like, I feel like they're just a complete team from top to bottom, and they were even before the season began. So now they're minus 670 to win the East. So like if you didn't jump on that before, like just a huge missed opportunity in my opinion there. I mean, granted, plus 300 isn't the best odds, but considering what you were seeing in front of them with the Nationals and the Phillies, I just thought that was just such good value, and I was shocked when we talked about that before the season began, how low they were, because, I mean, they were right in line there with the Mets, and I thought the Mets were going to go nowhere. I mean, they started off okay, but I think they kind of fell back into what we were expecting. Now the plus 7,000 to win the NL East, but yeah, that was one of the ones that I really scratched my head about before the season began, and it just kind of ended up playing out that way.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of these you end up, when you're looking at these numbers, you end up just playing the what if game, and
sure.
and a lot of it is hindsight. But if you are looking for value, like I said with the World Series, you're trying to turn it on the other side. Then you're looking at those who might have fallen. So that would be a team like the Cardinals, who went from plus 200 to win the NL Central to plus 425. That's a logjam there, and so you're still talking about one of three teams, but the Cubs are plus 150 and the Brewers are plus 175.
Right.
So are the Cardinals, who are 2 games out of first of the Cubs, only a game and a half behind the Brewers. Maybe you look at that. I mean, their offense is atrocious and could be up there with the worst of them, as 3 people who have been on the Busch Stadium Jumbotron can attest to. But at the same time, that's a team that certainly has a talent and could turn it around. And Matt Carpenter, we saw what he did last year. He could, conceivably do that again.
I think it's too late for the Cardinals. I just feel like...
Or not, then, yeah. Which is fine.
I mean, I look at the Cubs. I mean, they solidified their bullpen with Kimbrel. As he works out, they got a stellar bullpen near the end. The Brewers just have too much offense. I mean, that's one of those teams where, they don't have the best pitching staff, but the offense kind of carries them each and every night.
And the Pirates are a half game behind them, but the Pirates are plus 1,400 to win.
So what do you mean by too late for them?
I just feel like the Cardinals are still in contention by the numbers, but I don't see either of these teams falling back enough that the Cardinals can catch up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't see a clear path for them to getting into the playoffs with the teams that are in front of them, with the way the wild card is set up currently. Like, I just think that they needed to be they needed to be ahead right now to even have a chance. I don't see the Cardinals pulling ahead at any point.
Well, I think this division's too competitive to even get a wild card team, so it's going to be whoever wins this division most likely is the one to get in. But
Cardinals are 2 games out of the wild card as well as the division.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, no,
we'll see what happens there. But 2 games, the Pirates at 2.5 games, the Pirates have been red hot the last 3 weeks. I don't know if that's necessarily sustainable. Yeah, you would think that the talent with the Cubs and the Brewers would prevail here, and one of these other 2 teams won't. The Cardinals and the Pirates I'm talking about won't wind up prevailing in this division. But it's tough to necessarily pick between the Cubs and Brewers and bet them at pretty low division odds, considering, I mean, betting a team at plus 145 or plus 185 at the midway point with the top 4 teams in this division within 2.5 games isn't very safe, whether you think the Cardinals or Pirates are good. So this just makes it a really tough division to bet, where I would only feel comfortable taking value on like the Cardinals at plus 450, the Pirates at plus 900, rather than betting a team at plus 185 or plus 145 who's 2.5 games or 1.5 games ahead of the 4th place team.
I just feel like the Cardinals, because the trade deadline's approaching. So you have to make a decision within the next 2 weeks if you're going to be a buyer or a seller. It just doesn't make sense for me for the Cardinals to be a buyer because they're an old team overall. They got guys like Matt Carpenter, Yadier Molina, Paul Goldschmidt. I don't think is that old. I don't know off the top of my head, but they need to start getting younger. So for me, I just don't. This season just doesn't make sense for me when it comes to them. I don't see them competing. I don't see them being competitive in this division here. So to me, it's just like I would just start selling off and just look towards next season.
I mean, I might understand that from like an on paper's perspective, but I think realistically, you're only 2 games out, and you have, half. It's not technically half a season, but I don't know. We've seen every team make a run at some point, 1 year to get into the playoffs. So,
well, just to use another example real quick too. So the Indians are looking like they're going to be sellers. Now they're 6.5 out, I think, behind the Twins, but they've made it a lot closer than it was 2 weeks ago. But they're already kind of in the mentality that they're going to be sellers because Trevor Bauer is being talked about in a lot of rumors. Now they're much further out than the Cardinals are, but they're still
5.5 now.
But that division is not competitive at all. It's either the Twins or the Indians. The other teams are nowhere close.
Right.
So that's kind of the mentality that I'm at with the Cardinals here, because you look at a team like the Indians who do legitimately still have a shot to get in, but they're already looking to be sellers at this point. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Cardinals. Yes, they're much closer, but I just don't see it coming through for them.
Let's talk individual awards. In the AL MVP, not much has changed at the very top in that Trout was plus 150. He's out to another Troutian season, so he's minus 200 now. But in second,
that has shifted a lot.
Oh.
Mike Trout is minus 400.
Okay, well, there you go.
It was 200, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, where do we have DJ LeMahieu? Because he was off the board on opening day.
Still,
and
so
he was
still plus 500.
Still plus 500. Okay, well, I will... if only to give a shouts out to the DJ right now, because to go from off the board to plus 500 is an accomplishment in of itself.
But he's one of those guys that it's one of those like unlikely MVP guys. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have that power. Like, when you see MVP guys, it's usually the guys who are hitting 30 home runs, knocking in 100. LeMahieu is a very, very good on-base guy. He's not a power hitter. He doesn't hit a lot of doubles. He's not that guy. So like,
yeah, but I mean, I think what he has shown this year is like it didn't matter where he was, and that was always like the little power he had was because he was at Coors,
right?
And yeah, he's still in AL East Parks, but he's carrying that team. And if the Yankees win that division, and Stanton and Judge, Stanton, who knows when we'll see him again. Judge,
yep.
Well, depending on what he does, almost regardless of what he does, if Trout slips up at all or maybe gets hurt or even just continues to do what he does, because, there's always this perception of like it's just boring to this point what Trout does, game after game. Yeah. Like playing for the Yankees, winning the AL East, having this story where nobody expected him, to be the one who leads them. DJ LeMahieu at plus 500 seems like really good value to me.
I think the odds are fair on LeMahieu. I like the narrative that you came up with there. I just think maybe being the
I didn't just make
or
it,
not make up the narrative that you presented the case for DJ LeMahieu, and I feel like one piece in it about him being the unexpected guy might actually hurt him, because there's so much firepower there with the Yankees that you would think of the MVP coming from the Yankees as a home run hitter, a guy that's hitting more in the middle of the order.
Gary Sanchez.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Sanchez would be that
sure.
guy.
I mean, Sanchez or a healthy Judge, like any of these guys. And what LeMahieu's going to potentially do in terms of leading each league in hitting, in batting average, if he can do that, that would be really impressive and maybe help his case. It just, when it comes down to it, I feel like the people that vote for MVP are going to just look at these numbers, and Trout's numbers are still going to be better than LeMahieu, despite how impressive of a transition he's had to the Yankees and how well he's done for them through all these injuries.
Moving forward, real good NL MVP, race brewing, which we've known for quite a while. But you had Bellinger, who went from plus 2,800. He's plus 100 now as the favorite, not far behind Yelich, who went from 20-1 to plus 165. Really, nobody else close. Arenado's at plus 900. But he actually had backed off. If you're looking at the two of those players, let's maybe take the odds out of it, because I think, because there's another so close, you're probably not really putting too much on either of these guys at this point. But do you have a strong stance in terms of one or the other?
It's too close. Like, it's just way too close.
So that's a no.
Yeah. I guess I would favor with Yelich in this spot here, because
does it matter that he won it last year?
No, I mean, to be honest, like, anything that's happened in the past shouldn't matter. We're talking about the MVP of this season. So, like, kind of with your LeMahieu argument that Julian was saying too, like, oh, well, it's impressive that he led the hitting and, the National League before, now that shouldn't matter. Like, this is about 2019. So, I mean, Yelich is he's consistent. With Bellinger, like, he is all about the peaks and valleys, and he's kind of, right before the All-Star break, he was kind of tanking again. after that huge first 2 months. So as of right now, it's Yelich. But I mean, this is so close that few good weeks by one of these guys could really shift the odds at this point. So I just don't feel like it's worth taking that at the odds you're getting, at least.
I don't think there's any NL bet, MVP bet worth making.
No.
And none of the other guys are going to win it. It's going to be Bellinger or Yelich. I like the number on Yelich a little bit better because you get the plus 165, but I would favor Bellinger currently for the award. I just think the way the Dodgers are going, the inconsistencies, I don't necessarily mind as much in baseball because I think people look so much at the end of the year numbers and see that he'll be most likely on the best team in the NL. The Dodgers are probably going to wind up with another ridiculous record. So I think Bellinger deserves to be slightly favored in the odds like he is, but I wouldn't bet on him. This is a situation where congratulations if you threw some darts out there before the season and took Bellinger, what was it, 2,800 and Yelich plus 2,000. Then you just sit on both of those and you're all set. But at this point, I think it's a little too late to do anything with how this has been cut right down to a two-man race. And in the AL, the odds are basically telling you that Trout's already won it. So really tough to bet on MVP, I guess, at this stage in the season.
Yeah, definitely with Bellinger, that extra you're paying for is the standings. And whereas we just talked about the NL Central and how wide open that's going to be. On the Cy Young side, appears that we'll at least have a race. Verlander is pretty comfortably ahead, but he's still plus 180 with Garrett Cole, his teammate, at plus 400. Giolito goes from off the board to plus 450. And a guy that I like, Morton, 50-1 to now 5-1. And then on the NL side, it looks like it's going to be kind of a two-horse race between Scherzer and Hyunjin Ryu. Depending, again, if we want to depend it on playoff positioning, the Nationals currently are in the first wild card spot. Didn't matter last year, obviously, with Jacob deGrom. Scherzer not exactly having that type of season.
Right. Verlander makes no sense to me at plus 180. I don't see how you take that bet. I mean, just the home runs alone should kill his Cy Young chances. I can't imagine.
Well, then that means you like somebody else who's at much better odds.
Morton, I think, makes so much sense. I love Morton at this spot. I mean, no one's really talking about him, but when you go back and look at his stats, he's really quietly putting together such a good season for the Rays. He's just been, I don't think he's allowed more than 3 runs in a start more than twice this season, and that's kind of like Jacob deGrom territory from last year. But no one's really talking about Morton at all. Verlander, like I said, just makes no sense because he's on pace to allow almost way more home runs than he's ever allowed.
It's not his fault, did he?
Right, yeah, the balls are juiced. But plus 180 for Verlander and then Cole at 400, that should be swapped, in my opinion. I don't know.
Real quick, people have been betting on 3 people, so it's moved the odds a little bit. People have been betting on Verlander, who is down to plus 170, Garrett Cole, who's at plus 350, and Morton went from plus 500 down to plus 400.
There you go.
So people have been betting those 3 guys, and it's pushed other guys back. Giolito is now plus 550. And he went from off the board and opened at the All-Star break at plus 450. So he's fallen down a little bit. Sale, who is a horrible bet, who I wouldn't be interested in. What was he? He was plus 300 plus opening 300. Day, plus 800 to open the All-Star break. He's now plus 1,300 because nobody is betting on him, and it just doesn't make sense. And the last time he won a game, he's coming up on his 1-year anniversary of winning a game at Fenway Park. Ooh. It's July. It might be soon. It might be July 11th, July 17th. It's something like that. The last time Chris Sale of 2018, last time Chris Sale won a game in July at Fenway Park. So he makes no sense.
Nope.
Giolito intrigues me, especially if people aren't betting on him, and he's going to plus 550. He's just probably not going to win it with the White Sox.
He's not going to be head and shoulders like deGrom was.
No.
Right.
That can mask, where your team is.
Right.
Right. So
and he's already starting to get hit already, right before we close the All-Star
Only the
break.
Cubs hit him twice, but nobody else
Still
does.
in there.
Those count, but we'll see how he does the second half. But
yeah, it'll be interesting to see too how Morton navigates the rest of the season too, because when the Rays signed him, it was a shrewd move because with Morton, it was always the 3rd time around in the order where he just always struggled against hitters, right? And the Rays were a team that we knew even going into the season they experiment a lot with their pitchers, be it with an opener. Really hasn't been the case with Morton. They've kind of let him go. And he's done a good job. He's been able to go 7 innings a lot of times.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about, even over the past couple starts here, he went 5 and 2/3 with 10 strikeouts, 7 innings with 12, 6 1/3, 6 1/3, 6, then 7, 7, 7. So he's been able to lengthen how effective he is longer into games. And for a team that's certainly in the wild card race, still in the division race, if he finishes strong the way that he started out, I mean, I'm with you guys, and I'm obviously with, the betting public as well, as we're starting to see that number drop for him.
It's interesting, too, because you look at the third time through the order for him as of right now, some of his best stats, like his K percentage goes up, his walk percentage goes down. Like he's definitely made some massive strides, and it's not a small sample either. It's 28 1/3 innings going through the third time in the order, so it's not like it's a small sample either. So he's definitely made some adjustments, and it's been pretty huge for him.
Yeah, he's been able to avoid, at least so far, really having to pitch in a lot of bad parks as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking at some of his road starts, he was in KC, he was in Miami, in Oakland. Has only made, in terms of 1 start in Toronto, 1 start in Boston, 1 start in New York so far. That'll change, obviously. That'll get tested again. But, hey, shouts out to Charlie Morton. He's been having a great year. All right. We're right around half an hour, so no sports tonight.
Nice.
Unless you guys are laying any action on the ESPYs. I don't...
well, it is really WNBA season, Janko, but you can find those plays on Twitter if you want them.
Great.
There you go. And, of course, the WNBA action and all odds are subject to change. See website for actual details, for actual odds. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and would like help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Any closing remarks as we sign off?
I was very disappointed that Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul didn't announce a Breaking Bad movie and instead announced a new brand of drinks. That was the hype. I thought it was going to be a Breaking Bad movie, and it was some alcoholic beverages.
Do we want a Breaking Bad movie?
Yes.
Are you as pumped for the Downton Abbey movie that is coming up?
What? No.
Got him.
Stupid.
Closing thoughts. We didn't talk any Kawhi. That was a heck of a move.
Sure.
Going over to the Clippers.
Yeah,
so
no, of course.
That just came at a nice 2 a.m. Saturday night or Friday night, 2 a.m. Woj bomb, whatever it was.
Shouts out to Chirag Hira getting that DK Live push out
yeah.
there.
That came out of nowhere.
I was impressed. I woke up and I had that. I was like, I don't know who that was, but they deserve something for pushing that.
Also, I'd assume friend of the show, Greg Ehrenberg, tweeting out, he's been doing this all offseason. I think it's really cool, taking the wins and the over-unders on DK Sportsbook for each team and projecting playoff seeding based off of that. The Clippers were always in the top 4 just before Kawhi was even on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of that kind of hedge as to whether they get him or not. Now with him and obviously Paul George, number 1 seed.
And number 1 in title odds.
There you go. And with so many teams, like it used to be with the big threes and even the Warriors as well, you didn't love them in the regular season because you knew that they just weren't going to have the depth to win as many games as, say, the Bucks did or the Raptors did. But now with everyone just going tandems, does that change? We think how the regular season plays out. These teams can afford a little bit more depth maybe, and they can put up the higher win totals in the regular season.
I think it will to a degree. And you look at Kawhi Leonard's teams, they've always been good regular season teams with the exception of the year he played 7, 8, 9 games, whatever it was, before forcing his way out of town. So he's always been, look at how good Toronto was last year, and they gave him a lot of rest. So I think this is going to be a year where a lot of teams are very close in the standings because you can't really run away with it when there's so many good tandems now, especially in the West.
Yeah, I wonder how they'll handle his management then this year and how that might affect things. I mean, that team's going to be...
But then it's just going to be, a Paul George night. They can alternate who's off. There'll be a Paul George night where you pay up for Paul George. There'll be a Kawhi night where you pay up for Kawhi, just switching on and off. Same with Anthony Davis and LeBron.
Zubic night, Patrick Beverly night.
Maybe when George and Kawhi are both resting.
There you go.
Lou Williams, big night off the bench.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it here at Panel B. For Julian, Steve, I'm Alex Jankowski. Julian Edlow, Steve Buchanan, I'm Alex. I'll give you guys the last names.
Thank you.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right. We'll see you guys next time.